It's time to look at the way we earn. From banking to superannuation to benefits, there's one moment and every individual is most engaged with the financial services they use, when they start a new job. Maintaining that engagement through the workplace is the key to helping every employee live their best financial life. So Flair's co-founders are coming up, James Windon and Daniel Cohen. Please come and join us, gentlemen, to discuss how to activate every hard-working Australian as a FinTech consumer, ensuring they're getting the most out of the money they've earned. James, Daniel, come on up, join us on stage. Put your hands together. There we go.
Two of these?
And I'll have the other microphone back, please. Otherwise, we're going to keep your deposit on it. Go, you're going to want to sit down? You want to stand up?
I think we'll stand.
It's going to stand? All right, I'll let you guys.
Let's hope so. All right.
There we go.
I might sit. Thank you.
You're going to sit? Okay. Morning, guys. Thank you very much for having us. I'm James. This is Dan. We're from Flair. Today we're going to be talking about our view that the future of finance is in the workplace. We're going to spend a lot of time today talking about pay. In fact, we're probably spending a lot of time this week at the conference talking about pay. So many great Australian companies are pay companies. Afterpay, ZipPay, LimePay. When you look at BPay, the MPP, so many of these businesses are focused on dollars that are in people's accounts and consumer spending. And it makes sense. It's a huge pile of money every year. $1 trillion every year gets moved in spending. And in addition to these businesses that actually sit at the point of sale, there's also a series of amazing fintechs that are wrapped around that in neobanking, mortgages, stored value cards. But our view is that actually the largest transaction in the economy is being ignored. And it's not pay that's coming out of people's accounts, it's your pay. Pay that's coming into your bank account. If you stop and think, there's $1 trillion every year that moves into people's bank accounts. It's pretty much the largest expense for most businesses, 65% of expenses. If you think about an individual as an income statement, this is for most people their sole source of revenue or at least their majority source of revenue. But the interesting thing about it is despite there's a huge flow of money coming into accounts every year, there's been very little innovation in this over the last decade. You can't really stop and think about major businesses that have been built in Australia or in many ways around the world that have fundamentally changed the way people earn their money. And that's a little bit strange because the workplace has always been a fantastic location for building a financial services business. And it's our view that if the first wave of Australian fintechs were fought out and the battleground was the point of sale system, we believe the second wave is going to be the workplace. It simply makes so much sense to bank where you earn your money. And the reason for that is threefold. As a fintech, when you think about selling products to consumers, you're ultimately going to have to answer three questions, whether you like it or not. The first question you're going to have to answer is, who is my customer? It's a major identity issue. The second question you're going to need to answer is, when will they need my product? We know that timing is everything in financial services. People don't simply wake up and decide they're going to buy something. You need to have the right product in front of the right person at the right time. And the final piece, and probably the most important piece, is why should they trust me? The idea of banking in the workplace is not a novel concept. It's been around since the middle of the 19th century when credit unions were created in Germany. And in many ways, when we think about credit unions, we can think about the rise of them in Australia in the 20th century. Structurally, they've declined. So there are about 700 in the middle of the 20th century leading up to the late 80s. As of last year, there's less than 40 left. But I would caution against looking at the form and focus on the substance. Because whilst there are less credit unions around, the dynamics that made them successful from a business model perspective, and also while they'll value accretive from a customer perspective, are still pervasive and play out in the workplace every day. The question isn't simply, will credit unions exist in the 21st century? They probably won't. The question is, how can the workplace answer these three questions and allow for the efficient distribution of financial products? So today I'm going to talk through thematically why I think that still works. I want to talk about how the assets that sit in the workplace, data, context and trust, ensure that this should be the next platform where many billion-dollar businesses are created around financial services. Daniel is going to then describe what we think the major categories that will exist on this platform are. We think there are 4. And then finally, we'll share some of the interesting stuff we're doing at Flair and make an announcement about a new piece of technology we're rolling out. So let's dive in. So the first of these is data. So the question that everybody needs to ask is, who is my customer? If you could close your eyes and snap your fingers as a FinTech, how can I get all of the information I need to run my business in one location? Not simply for the purposes of validation, but friction. The more information I have about someone, the more easily they can engage with my products. So we think of 3 interesting types of data that are around. The first of those, basic information. Not terrific data. It's not this data. I think we're having some transition issues with the slides, so I'm probably going to keep talking and hope we can fix it. Can someone try and solve this problem, please? Oh, there we go. Awesome. Seamless. So first type of information is what I consider basic information about who somebody is. What's their name? What's their address? What's their date of birth? The second type of information is documentation to identify exactly who they are. Put you inside things like KYC, AML, Safe Harbor. How do we find a location for up-to-date, high-fidelity documentation about these sorts of information? And then finally, earning capacity. Is this person employed? How much money do they make? Are they going to remain employed? Or are they at risk of losing their job? Are they entering termination? So if you think about where can I find one location where not only this information exists, but people are incentivized to keep it up to date, the answer is the Human Resources Information System. There simply isn't a higher quality set of total data about individuals out there at the moment. So data exists in the workplace. The second question is timing. Timing is everything. You need to get the right product in front of the right person at the right time. If you get the right product in front of the right person at the wrong time, then you basically got the wrong product in front of everybody. So what you need to do is ensure, how do I make the right offer in an embedded way when someone needs a product? You know, if we look at the amazing rise of the buy now, pay later space and other embedded finance, what we've seen is the next generation of financial products at the edges that offer what people need when they need them. So what we sort of wanted to show you guys is something that says, look, when someone goes out to buy a financial product or engage in a financial product, there's usually a series of leading indicators that suggest something's happened that is going to motivate them to behave in that particular way. Take an example here. Someone wants to engage in foreign exchange. Well, what's the likelihood that someone's about to buy foreign exchange? A really good indicator is that they've decided to go on holiday. Awesome. So someone's decision to go on holiday is a really strong leading indicator that now's the time to move and try and get in front of them with your offer. It turns out there's actually another leading indicator to that. This is like a babushka of leading indicators. The HR database. Because what you do before you go on holiday is you apply for leave at your workplace. And that's a really strong signal that sometime in the near future, you're going to be likely to be engaging financially. Similarly with life insurance. Life insurance is the ultimate product that is sold, not bought. Most people are buying life insurance when they decide to have a child, over 75%. What do you do when you're about to have a child? You go on maternity or paternity leave. That's a strong signal as well. Another example is financial advice. What motivates people to get financial advice? Usually they have a cash flow increase. They come into an additional amount of money they weren't expecting. Okay, what's a leading indicator for that? Promotion, bonus. So what you're seeing is if the goal of embedded finance in the future of banking at the edges is getting the right product in front of people at the right time, someone's life is giving you a suggestion about when that moment is going to be. And I guess what I'm telling you is that there's a whole data set in the workplace that is actually leading in front of that tells you when those events are about to occur. It's a really interesting mental model to think about. So the workplace can solve the data issue, I know who someone is. The workplace can solve the context issue, I know when someone is about to buy. But there's still a missing piece, which is probably the most under-talked asset that exists in FinTech, which is trust. Andy Haldane, who's the Chief Economist of the Bank of England, talks a lot about trust. And I think as we move to a world where technology powers our lives, we probably forget what actually imbues people with trust. He made the observation here, this was a speech he gave, I think about 2014, and it was really talking about the decline of trust in the banking system. What he identified is that people have 2 types of trust in financial services. The first one is what he calls personalized trust, which is basically trust with a person. I trust John Smith, the banker at Acme Bank. I was going to say NAB Todd, but say Acme. Then the second type of trust is the institution, right? Why do I trust Acme Bank? His observation was the following. It turns out, whilst he's talking at the back end of the financial crisis, it turns out that trust in an institution or generalized trust is almost exclusively a function of personalized trust. The reason I trust Acme Bank is because I trust John Smith, and I know John, and John works at Acme Bank. And so what's happened is, in addition to the high-speed blowout of generalized trust from crisis, or whatever trust businesses have built up over a century or 2 centuries, declining at the back end of 2000, and in this case 14, his observation was, at the same time banks were closing branches, less people were around to actually build the personalized trust. So there was no engine to actually help banks re-established their generalised trust because people weren't there. The summary of this, genius observation, is people trust people. And that's one of the major reasons people trust their workplace, because they trust the people with whom they work. And so what the workplace offers us, thematically, from a discourse perspective, high quality data about who someone is, when they're going to buy, and a platform full of trust to ensure they're willing to engage. Cool. So what Dan's going to talk through now is exactly, well, what are the products? What products belong on the workplace platform? And then some stuff we're doing. I'll turn this off. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, James. So the question that one has to ask is that we have these three assets: data, context, and trust. We have 200 years of history of banking in the workplace. What does the future workplace bank look like? These three assets, this history, what's the next revolution or evolution? And we believe that comes from the unbundling of the paycheck. If we have a look at our paycheck and we unbundle it, what are the 4 key products that a bank in the workplace can offer? The first key product is cash flow. When and how am I paid? The second key product is when can I retire? Wealth and savings. And the third product is, hey, I'm working for the man. How do I minimize my tax, gross versus net income? And lastly, credit. How do I leverage the work that I'm doing into my life? I want to explore all 4 of these products in a little bit more detail and really look around the world for case studies where different companies have taken the paycheck and unbundled it in its own right. The first is cash flow. The largest creditor to businesses is not banks, not other financial services institutions, but people without balance sheets, their employees. The largest creditor. And that's because that the timing of when wages are paid, that large expense that James spoke about, 65% of a business's costs, are done on an arbitrary kind of notion. Weekly, fortnightly, monthly, 2 weeks in advance, 2 weeks in arrears. These concepts are baked in technology associated with my inability to pay in real time. And so the bank of the future, the workplace bank, really looks at this large transaction and says, how do I help employees get paid when they need to be paid? And it's being done all around the world, whether that be Even or WageStream or Earnin. These kind of notions of payroll timing are critical to that one product of cash flow finance. Second product, wealth and savings. I work for a certain number of years until I can retire and enjoy my life. How do I make sure that I maximize the work that I'm doing into retirement? And this is a uniquely germane concept to Australia, where you have a system of superannuation. The question is whether it be 9.5% or 12% of my wage, how do I make sure that that's visible, that's tangible, that's real to the individual as part of that paycheck? Tax. We think about kind of the money coming into our bank account. We think about gross salary, but we don't think about what's in between. How at the mass market level do I ensure that the tax that I pay is the appropriate amount, that I maximize the salary and the wages that I earn? And again, companies are doing this locally here in Australia. The issue is it's for 10% of the population. How do I democratize tax savings, tax minimization, and optimize that for the mass market? And lastly, credit. Credit is all about leverage. How do I maximize what I'm doing and what I'm earning to roll that into my life? And around the world, credit is effectively a data product. With the assets that James spoke about, whether it be data, context, and trust, with those 3 assets, how do I take what I'm doing in the workplace and build better credit products for the individual, leveraging those 3 assets? So these 4 kind of areas, whether it be tax, savings, wealth, cash flow, or credit, have been unbundled all around the world by many, many FinTech startups. The question is why is an HR company telling you, or me, about a workplace financial services platform? And the answer is because we're not an HR company. If you have a look at the evolution of FinTech today, it lies largely in the background of the experiences that we're doing in the foreground. HR is that foreground. HR is where I spend most of my time as an employee and an employer. And as a FinTech company, as a financial services company, what we wanted to do is go to the edge of the transaction and serve the basic problems that exist in the workplace. Automation, compliance, and lastly, the employee experience. But in order to earn the right, in order to get to the employee experience, we needed to solve problems for businesses. We needed to solve those problems. Are my employees being paid correctly? Are they being documented correctly? And how can we solve those problems for employers and employees today? And we spent the first 4 or 5 years living to this vision of how do I help every employee live their best financial life? But in order to get there, what we really had to do is solve the immediate problems of businesses. And for 4 years, we did that as an HR company. We did that through automation, compliance, and employee engagement. COVID came along in 2019, 2020, and all of a sudden, that acceleration up to the higher level of employee experience went from a nice to have to a need to have, where every employer and employee had to really help their employees live their best financial life. And as we go through this, what we launched was, as we realized that we were a financial services company, and we'd been working on this for 4 or 5 years, we launched the Flair platform. The Flair platform was there to kind of solve or leverage those 3 assets that we had, data, context, and trust, and really put a platform in place where employees could do 3 things. One is get products. We had to help employers offer products that were there for the individual, leveraging those 3 assets. The second thing that we had to be able to do is identify the individual using the data that we had. And the third thing that we had to do was being able to open up these accounts and fund them in a connected way to payroll. Through the Flair platform, we could do all of those 3 things. The second thing that we had to be able to do is offer up that platform in any environment that was currently being used in the workplace. What we wanted to do was provide that frictionless, seamless experience at scale, where now 1 in 5 Australians start a job with Flair because of this embedded nature and connectivity to all the platforms that exist out there. And the third things that we had to do was build a series of applications on top of that platform that allowed these employees to get those full spectrums of those 4 kind of types of products in the workplace. The question is what products should Flair build and what products should a partner on? And the answer lied largely in what we were really, really good at. We were really, really good at building the wealth and savings components for employees, that 9.5% to 12% of our salary that is germane to Australians. And so we went out and built a superannuation fund that is now the 2nd largest fund in Australia by net member acquisition. Right? Why? Because it had those 2 assets from before. It had the platform to be able to open accounts, identify individuals, and fund them all in real time. The other question is well, what other products should we build? And what should we partner on? And the answer lied in opening up our development portal for all people to build on top of those 3 assets, data, context, and trust. And what we've done today is really gone out there and hired a guy by the name of Ben Stiles out of Xero to open up our developer portal for all. We've partnered with the likes of Smart Salary and Lendly in the salary packaging space. We've built our own superannuation fund. And now we're looking and saying, what other financial services under those 4 topics, wealth, tax, savings, cash flow, and credit, can we offer to the individual in an embedded way, in a frictionless way, that leverages the 3 assets and the 200 years of history? So we're open for business, and what we wanted to kind of announce today was the launch of our Flair platform and really bring it to the community to build financial services applications that helps the working Australian live their best financial life. Thank you. I think we wanted to open it up to questions if we've got a bit of time. Yep.